Hey guys, Jay here, and today, after all the waiting for a lot of people on my channel, it is Cast When Stunned time. In 3.25 League of Cowgirl, I just put this screen on because it is what it is, right? I plan to do like a actual presentation on it, but then I realized POB just seems to be a little bit better, right? Easier to follow because it is what people are more familiar with, basically. And also, part of the reason why I want to show it in POB is because POB actually have the testing version. So basically, they update some of the stuff, like the passive skill tree is updated to 3.25, but some of the skill gems and gears and affixes are not actually updated. Anyway, the reason why I decided to go on POB here because, well, I don't think Cast When Stunned is supposed to be beginners friendly, and I will explain in a little when I explain the setup. Basically, we do require a certain amount of uniques for this to even happen. You cannot really play it from the start. You probably can pivot from something else into this build. I would say comfortably should be around level 85-ish. The reason why is this build is very specific in a sense that you have to take anything to your face. You have to tank the hit. Actually, you have to tank the hit, take the hit, and mitigate the hit and recover from the hit. So a lot of defense need to be invested in order to the build to actually even function in the first place, right? So again, highly stressed here that this is not meant to be, if you are like a very new player to the game, I would not recommend you to follow this setup early on. Sure, if you like it, you can eventually respec or build this character as like your second character, third character, something like that. But as a very first character, as a very first build, I cannot stress enough that this is not good. Alright, another reason why it's not good. For League Start, normally, right, people values the speed as one of the main thing that everyone wants. You want to be as fast as possible. You want to be as efficient as possible in terms of unlocking the league mechanic and also unlocking the atlas, those kind of things, right? This build is not good for that. The reason why is it kind of sacrifice speed for defenses and for playstyle as well. It is one of the very few builds in the game that has the playstyle of a zero button, and you can be very chill once you get it set up because you literally just tank everything, like intentionally, not even try to avoid or dodge anything, right? Anyway, let's get to the actual setup. So first of all, we are going to be a chieftain. And the Chieftain Ascendancy got reworked a little bit, but we are taking the same stuff. We're not taking the new things here. We are taking the Salio's Cleansing Water. This is very important, unaffected by Ignite, and also give us a lot of resistances if we stack a lot of fire resistant. It will convert into cold and lightning, right? Next one, Valako's Storm Embrace. This basically is all the tankiness that the Ascendancy is giving to our character. Maximum fire resistant, also translate into lightning and cold, so you stack max fire rest, you will get all the rest, basically. Hinekora's Death Fury. This takes care of every need of damage that you will ever need in the game. And also it does make the builds very good for a lot of contents, actually. So next thing, I want to talk a little bit about the content that this build can do for the league, especially early on. So first of all, this build, if you get it going, it is very good for farming Ultimatum. And farming Ultimatum in map, you can sell Catalyst. You can it is much easier to sell Catalyst with the auction currency auction house, by the way. And you also can just find and sell inscribed ultimatum, because some of them might be very valuable. And a lot of people actually make a good amount of money last league just doing ultimatum. This league, there's no nerf to it, so I think it still be the same. Maybe it just feels better because of the currency auction house, right? We can buy the scarabs easier, we can sell the stuff that we are getting easier as well. So ultimatum is one thing. Second thing, this is not sure, but I think ritual is going to be much better this league. I'm not sure if it's going to be very good, but at least this is decent now, right? The reason why is they are adding the corpses, the specter corpses from affliction to ritual. So this build is very good at basically farming a small circle area around the character. You just stand in the middle, you kills everything, you tank everything, and you get the reward after all. So this build is very good for it. Another thing Chieftain Explosion is very, very good for is farming expedition. Map expedition, to be specific. You just go in, you pop a big expedition, the extreme archaeologist keystones, you put one bomb down, you detonate, you explode something, and everything just die, right? So these are the three things that I think just obviously are very good with this build. Anyway, we already talked about the resistant, max resistant, and explosion ascendancy. Now, Ramaco Sunlight is still the last thing that we pick here, because we are scaling ignite damage from Hinekura's Death Fury, to be specific. Also a little bit from the skill that we are triggering with Casper's Stun, and I will talk more about it into the later stage of the character. Spoiler alert, eventually I think Juggernaut will still be the endgame build, because it is just more tanky. There is a lot of actually a decent amount of conversion in damage taken. So damage taken as fires, lightning as chaos, something from like corrupted shield, something like that. They were taken away, right? So basically right now we cannot get as much sources of that anymore, and which means we kind of need to be tankier. There are buffs to the overall defensive in terms of endurance charges, and then also maximum life roll on gear. Hey, I'm not entirely sure until I actually get it set up in the game. However, what we are seeing here in terms of numbers looks good enough, right? From experience, by the way. I have been playing this for a couple of leagues already, exclusively, mostly, right? So Ascendancy, Chieftain, best to start out because it does take care of a lot of defense, and also it has a best offensive nodes in the game if you can make it work. And the majority of the setup here is going to make the Hinekura's Death Fury, the nodes here, work, right? Passive skill tree. So we are a Marauder, we go out here, grab life, right? Very basic stuff. I would not grab the maximum resistances here like immediately. I would just go through here, grab maybe some life, but personally I would just go straight and get some damage first, and then I fill out the life a little bit later, right? But anyway, because we should not be leveling with this build anyway, so just know that you should get everything here first. The last like 10 levels of the build is going to be all the stuff that you get from this point until here, right? So just fill out the skill tree in this side first, because most of the defensive stuff are here. We get it, we can do like maps very, very comfortably. It's not going to be fast because the nature of the build is not a fast build, but you are going to do maps very well, especially like the originality of this build is created because of the Affliction. So this league, Affliction is coming back. if we see a juice map, this build is going to be very good for it, because you basically playing the build that's made for affliction, right? So passive skill tree, very, very simple. The couple of things I think that is noteworthy, basically, is first of all, right now we not only have the extra damage from critical strike from this source, we also have this node we take by default right now also give 30%, and also the mastery here gives an additional 20%. It is in place of the previous armor applies to chaos damage. So we lose that, but we get this. So with this one, you already have 80% reduced extra damage from crit, right? So you are very, very good on that sense. If you, by the way, want to give 100%, just try to get 4 tattoo and just slap them on here later. You don't need that much intelligence anyway, right? I have no intelligence from rare gear or anything. I don't think that my unique have intelligence as well. So all is from the skill tree, and we can spare 4 points for it. Next thing, we have a bunch more of fire resistant and maximum fire resistant or maximum resistances. So we have here 3 points. In addition to this, we already got this, and then Sword of Steel as well. So these 88% maximum resistances are all from the skill tree, and then from a flask, ruby flask. It is a normal flask, by the way, no mage blood, obviously. You can have the additional 2% very easily through the jewels. So this time, this league, the jewels will be able to roll 1% maximum resistance. So we are having 2 rare jewels in the build, and you obviously can just try to get 1% resistance on both of them. I don't think that it's going to be too hard to get anyway, but even if you don't have it for the early game, this is going to be fine, right? So you don't need to even use Purity of Fire. Later, the build will evolve, and then you will change the setup around a little bit, but for now, this should be good. A lot of maximum resistances by default on the skill tree, so it's very easy to reach like 90%, or in this case 88%, very, very easily. Oh, right. The mastery, right? I am taking the 1 life per second per uncapped fire resist. We are having a lot of resistance, having a lot of fire resistance as a chieftain, and so this is a very good regen node, very good for sustain. I try to get a lot of life, some elemental damage, try to get as much chance to ignite as possible from the skill tree, right? It is very, very good. I might even say that we should anoint something like Holy Dominion over here. Should be very good. Or Ash, Frost, and Storm also looks pretty good, right? For some extra chance to ignite, because chance to ignite, global chance to ignite, is the only way that we can make Hinekora's Death Fury actually ignite, right? We are taking some of the endurance charges, obviously, because it's very, very, very good, this league, by the way. Super good. It gives elemental damage reduction now instead of elemental resistance, so it is just damage reduction, so it's on top of resistances, so super, super good. Before, we can only get 8% of that stat from the Juggernaut. Right now, any class can get 4% per endurance charge. Yeah. Life Mastery. Right now, I think the only life mastery worth taking for this setup is 15% life if equipped body armor doesn't have any life modifier. We are using the Cloak of Flame, so this works, right? So this is the only life modifier that's worth it. The other mastery, now flat life is nerfed to 30, which is bad. And we are not going, if you are going low life, I would say the low life at 55% is still a good mastery for Petrified Blood. However, I'm not even sure if we need to go Petrified Blood here, because I kind of want to still have some reservation to put on a auto war cry. Right? In the skill section, I will explain in a little bit. We are having a recoup effect instead occur over 3 seconds here. Basically, it makes your recoup faster, 25% faster, which means 25% stronger. And we have a lot of recoup. And the last part, the last like 10 levels of the skill tree, we are going to this side over here. Personally, I think this Lethe Shade is always worth it for tanky build. Super, super worth it. Even though the traveling is 5 points from this, we have 5 travel points of nothingness, and then 2 more, so overall 7 points. But we can have Snowforge, which is pretty good, Lethe Shade, which is very, very good, and then we can also get the Growth and Decay, so we can get the Mastery of 10% less damage over time taken as well. I am taking this Aura Cluster. This really is because I really want to have at least 30 mana left, and I will explain why in the item section actually. There is a new addition to this league which make this build, the Chieftain, much better, and it is the Hateful Accursor Nameless Ring. It is teased in the content reveal, and it gives you Penance Mark, right? Penance Mark, if you don't know what it is a skill from the Warlock of the Mist in Affliction 3.23. It basically, when you cast Penance Mark on an enemy, when you hit it with whatever things you want, you will create a minion. It looks kind of like a ghost of some sort, but there's an enemy minion, right? And that minion will he is very weak, but he will attack you. First of all, it will help with triggering cast when stunned, and then second, it is something that you can explode and then just do the damage from Hinekura's Death Fury to the boss. And it is a constant source of additional enemy that you can use. Just cast the Penance Mark on the enemy, and then whenever you hit them with whatever you want, with whatever skill, just a random hit, you will get chance to explode, and eventually when it explodes, you would deal massive amount of damage and it will take care of the boss, right? So this ring alone just make this build so much better in terms of dealing with bosses, right? Normally, right, you will not have problem and even have to use the skill. The time when you need to use the skill is whenever you are soloing. For example, if you want to go to Simulacrum, you are sometimes left with Cosis or Omniphobia, and because there's not a lot of nearby monsters, you are not triggering too much, and then yeah, just naturally it takes a lot of time, or sometimes you can not even have enough damage to kill the boss. But this will have to solve that, because it will potentially give you a lot of damage from Hinekura's Death Fury, and then obviously we can just take care of the boss, right? This is a very, very mid-game setup. I would not say this is early game, because you can see a lot of uniques over here. We do have Combs Binding, which is normally a 1-2C unique. Valerium, 1-2C unique. This one is exclusively from Ritual, so... And by the way, if you didn't have it, it's okay, the build will still function. However, this is just to solve some single target issue that you potentially can have when you do like harder bosses like the Cosis in the Simulacrum. After all, this build is created to AFK Simulacrum anyway, right? So don't worry if you don't have this ring. Just get any rare ring with like life resistant, it'll be okay. In Amulet here, we still can use Defiance Destiny, by the way. It's still probably the best in slot. If you see that this one is cheap, Defiance Destiny with a decent roll, like 18-20%, something like that, just buy and use it. It is going to be better than a rare. And however, we do not really need it to survive with a lot of sustain from regen, recoup. Normally we will be okay without Defiance Destiny. The nerf is very hard, but it's not going to kill the item. Basically, it's still a good item, right? So if you want to, if you see it as affordable for you, go ahead, buy it. Defiance Destiny will still be probably best in slot amulet until the very end game, right? The rare item here is just life resistant. It looks intimidating at first, but if you remember, the maximum life roll in this league for tier 1 is like 130 something, right? So this 89 life is actually like a tier 3-ish. So it's not that impressive actually. We just want fire resistance to be a little bit higher because we do have some bonuses on the fire resistant, and try to get chaos resistant as well. Right, same thing for here. Craft dexterity normally because we do need some dexterity for gear requirement and gem requirement. Cloak of Flame, very basic. If you want to aim for as much ignite duration as possible. Formless Inferno here, well, this is specifically to the skill setup that we are using, which is with body swap of sacrifice, and I am going to explain a little bit. Basically, this one does help you to scale minion life a little bit better, right? So yeah, Formless Inferno. Dawnbreaker, not going to have this in the very early game, but with the nerf to the corruption, cannot be physical conversion anymore. I'm not sure about the price of this thing. To be honest, I'm not sure about the price of this thing. But this does give you a lot of HP. If you see here, if I just use 2 weapon, and I do think 2 weapon is good enough for mapping until like tier 16. But for content that require the character to be a little bit tankier, for example, if you want to go ahead and try out the Simulacrum, for example, probably you should do it at a point where you have a Dawnbreaker. Singularity is just a random, easy to find 1C weapon that I put in here. You can use any scepter with like fire damage over time. I don't think you should be looking for a level of all fire spell skill gem, because what we are skilling here is not fire spell skill gem. We are skilling the Chieftain Explosion, and then also we are skilling the minion life from the Spectre setup that we are going to explain in a little bit here. So anyway, that is the gear. The flask, I am just having 3 flasks up over here, which is granite flask of the tortoise. Basically, all the flasks will have gain charges when hit by an enemy because we are getting hit a lot, right? And then what we are looking for here is reduce effect of curse. 50% is way more than enough because this ring, implicit by default, is already 50% reduced effect of curse on you. It increased elemental ailment duration on you as well, which is a plus in this build. The reason why is because, well, eventually we will go ahead and switch to a fulcrum setup, which will increase the clear speed and smoothness of the build like immensely. So it's just the increased elemental ailment duration on you is just a very positive stat. Ruby flask, obviously, because we are wanting to have a lot of maximum fire resistance and have a chance to freeze, shock, and ignite on one of the flasks, right? So if I go curse, chance to shock, ignite, and freeze, and increase armor is probably the 3 best affixes on flask at the moment. You can also have, for example, if you want to have an additional flask, you can have, I don't think sulfur is going to be any good here because we already have enough curse reduction. It still will give you a little bit of increased damage, but I don't think you will need it. So maybe basalt will be good, just or movement speed will be good here for just better gameplay overall, right? So I think basalt will be good. Eventually we will improve the build, but this is like the bare minimum. for skills. Obviously, we have dependence mark from the ring. This cannot be supported by anything, so it is super important to get enough mana to cast it. You don't use mana on anything else. You only use mana for this one. So I think it costs 30 mana from what I have looked up. So make sure you have 30 mana unreserved, and yeah, just use penance mark when needed. Very rare, but still is very good, at least if you are still using Chieftain Explosion. Body Swap of Sacrifice. This gem deals damage. The other stuff is not important. The most important part here is Explosion deals base fire damage equal to 24% of the minion's maximum life. And we are scaling Ignite, so we linked it to life tap to cast it without mana problem, and a lot of stuff that scale burning damage or damage over time. Burning damage, deadly ailment, and swift affliction, those kind of things. The minion that we are going to be exploding in this case is going to be Spectre, and not any Spectre, but the Dark Marionette. If you don't know what it is a minion from Affliction League, again, that just came back to the game. You can find the corpse to summon this Spectre exclusively in Ritual. So probably starting a game with something Ritual related is actually very good for this build. Or preparing for this build, you should do some Ritual. You can buy the corpses from trade, but I'm not sure what is the price of the corpses. It will be like required in order to use this setup. So Ray Spectre, very simple. We just want to scale life. So minion life, empower, whatever other sources of global level to minion or minion or spell skill gem that you can have will improve the life of the Spectre. And I also linked it to combustion because when it explodes, it deals an explosion around, and if it has the chance to ignite, it can ignite the target and then just reduce the fire resistances. I'm not sure if it's gonna retain if we apply another bigger ignite on the target with the explosion. I think it still works because the enemies will still have all the ignite on them, but only the highest stack will be dealing the damage. I'm not entirely sure. If it doesn't work that way, simply just remove the combustion. But if it worked, there's some extra minus resistances. Oh, wait a minute. Actually, we don't need it because we are using this. Yeah, it fixed the enemy's resistance at minus 20%. So, okay, never mind. We don't even need to use it. So, don't use anything else. maybe minion. There is a elemental army. Yeah. We can have this as well for like quality of life, so they will apply exposure, right? So if you want to, you can do it. But normally, just the 3 links here is the core. I just want to try to fit another gem in here, but it's not important. Raise Factor, minion life, and then when you can get an Empower, just get an Empower into it. Right? It's not going to be the end of the day if you don't have the Empower, because mainly what we are trying to do is just to kill something small with this setup first, and then the ignite will spread, it will kill more things, something explode, you will have a big boy ignite, and that is going to be the main damage. Just as any other chieftain build, right? So body swap, sacrifice, and raise factor is going to be the main cast when stunned damage setup for this league, I think. Later, if we switch to a juggernaut, we will not be scaling ignite damage. We will still be going to go to the same old way of getting the triple damage staff for elemental skill, and then just skill hit, basically. I think this has a lot of potential. The reason why is I don't see any information on it being nerfed in terms of corpse life, right? So before, we have seen the corpse, the life number of this particular Dark Marionette Spectre raised to the ballpark of like 200k, 240k, something like that, and 24% of that is a massive amount of flat damage as a base to scale. So I think this is the best setup for damage in this league, hands down, because Detonate Death or Chain Reaction is dead. The other things still kind of similar, because we are chieftain. We already fixed the resistances of the enemy if we are stationary, and when we are body swapping around, by the way, we still are stationary. So punishment is going to be the curse of choice, because it is the only thing that can improve the damage at this point for the character as a curse. And of course, it also debilitate the enemy, which make them deal less damage as well. Link to cast with stun and life tap. I would link another skill here, just anything that will hit. For example, like I will still do tornado, right? Just tornado, element, turbulence, whatever the skill, doesn't matter. The thing here, what we are hitting, trying to hit the enemy here, is to trigger a penance mark, a more minion, basically. Later, we can also do the same tech of life gain on hit, and then the Watcher's Eye with Vitality, life gain on hit. Things like that is doable. With Tornado, the element of turbulence as well, it deals a lot of hit. It has a duration skill, so it do not need to trigger a lot of time. On average, which you have 3 tornadoes, it's 12 hits per second. Very, very good. And it looks cool, right? Automation, life taps, steal skin. This will help you to deal with bleed early on. Flame dash, link to life tap, and whatever you want. There's still one slot here, maybe cooling strike, something like that if you want. For the reservation, these are not all going to be used, by the way. So you can have purity of element to deal with elemental ailment earlier, right? Before you have fulcrum, you can just be immune to all elemental ailment, and this is a very cheap way, very easy way to do it. If you eventually get to like fulcrum stage of the build, you can remove this. It's not gonna be, as you can see here, we are not going to have resistance problem. This literally is only here for the elemental ailment. In this build, we have a lot of resistances. So when you have fulcrum, you need to switch one jewel to the I forgot the name. Let me actually find it. POE jewel. List the unique jewel. 1 second, please. Okay, Storm Shroud. I forgot the name, but I used it a lot, but I forgot the name. Anyway, it is Storm Shroud. And then get chance to avoid being shocked from flask and another sources, maybe from one row in a jewel. Then you can have 100% chance to avoid elemental ailments. Will that work? No, actually that will not work. Do not use Storm Shroud. Just get freeze and shock immunity from flask or some other sources. Maybe you need to use this for freeze immunity. Flask you can use for shock immunity, but you can use freeze immunity with Arctic armor, right? So you don't use purity of element anymore. If you have fulcrum, you have Arctic armor, which is 25%. You can then run it with like petrified blood, and then Koto arm. This is changed name to auto exertion, and it will reserve your mana with every war cry linked to it. We are linking Enduring Cry. We will be using Koto Arm and Enduring Cry. This is mandatory because it is the only way for us to actually generate endurance charges. If we eventually switch to being a Juggernaut, then we don't need it. But right now, as a chieftain, we need a source of endurance charge generation. So Koto Arm, Enduring Cry, I would say use it with purity of element and petrified blood. If you don't have 30 mana unreserved, then just ditch the petrified blood and use flesh and stone. It is changed this league to give you 10% less damage taken when in sand stance, so super good, right? So anyway, flesh and stone, petrified blood, Arctic armor, and maybe Koto arm will be the things that we are using in the fulcrum setup, because there we need to be able to be ignited. so we can spread the ignite from, you know, Fulcrum and Fan of Flame. Right? Oh, did I mention the Fan of Flame jewel? We literally just get one cluster jewel here for Fan the Flame. We don't even have any other cluster jewel. If you want more damage, sure, cluster jewel would be better, but personally, I really like going here for Lethe Shade. I just really like Lethe Shade as a tanky mechanic. Right? Is that everything for the build? I mean, I did not even do any calculation or configuration or something. Oh, gods. Pantheon. Soul of Arakali for less damage over time taken, and Soul of Shakari for dealing with poisons, and then also 5% reduced chaos damage taken. The classic thing that we are having. Okay, so there is something else that I want to talk about just a little bit. We do have something new here that potentially, I'm not sure if it's worth taking yet, but potentially it can be useful. So let me know what you think here. We have a stun mastery. We lose 3 points of useless shit here in order to get it. But we can get adrenaline. Gain adrenaline on stun for 2 seconds per 1 millisecond stun duration. Right? So when you are stunned, you'll gain adrenaline. For this build, even though your stun duration is a fraction of a second, however, you get stunned so frequently that you will always have permanent adrenaline on. So permanent adrenaline gives us the damage, attack cast speed, I think movement speed as well. So potentially it can be something good, right? So this potentially can be something that we can include into the build. Hits against you cannot be critical strike when you've been stunned recently. Well, this is a little bit risky when it comes to like high crit map. For example, if you enter the map and you get one shot immediately by a first crit, then you will never be able to even trigger this one, so you can be protected from crit. So personally, I think just get reduced extra damage from crit. It's just still better, right? I think they do have something else here. This one as well. This one is questionable for me personally. It increased stun threshold. I'm not sure how damaging this will be to cast when stunned, but the unfaltering notes here also give 10% of damage taken from stunning hits recovered as life. This is not recoup, this is recover. And without any further wording, I do believe this is instant recover. So I don't know. We need to really test this one out, see how it feels, because increased stun threshold is problematic, right? Maybe with a Juggernaut, maybe if we are not reliant on Hinekora's Death Fury, I can simply just take the Agnostic. It makes energy shield 0, so with Valerium, our thresholds for stun is literally 0. And that will allow us to be using this for free. And with this, of course, we can get the adrenaline stuff here. So there's a couple of things that I did not include here, but can be potentially very good for the build, by the way. So just keep that in mind if you even build this character before me, because I will not be playing this on League Start, by the way. If you are building this character before me, take into consideration this thing over here. We can test things out. Hopefully the damage just alone on this body swap sacrifice setup is going to be enough. If it is going to be enough, we don't need to rely on the Chieftain Explosion. We can just go full Gigachad Juggernaut again. And with that comes a lot of cool stuff actually. Because we can change the setup around to not be around Ignite anymore, right? Being just basically shoehorned into scaling Ignite with Hinekora's Death Fury is kind of boring. A little bit in my opinion, but it is what it is, right? Anyway, that is everything I want to share in this video today. It is already very long compared to other videos. Again, couple of important things I want to stress again. This should not be your beginner's build. Should not be your first build of the league. I already advocate for it not being the first build of the league, but a lot of people actually insist me to still make a video on this one. So yeah, still, anyway, if you really want to just play this build, go ahead, but should be your second character, at least second character. When you have all the gears prepared, if all the requirement prepared for it. If you start out as wanting to be this character, by the way, just go Righteous Fire. Go to pox.net, follow the footstep of the master himself, and just go Righteous Fire. Righteous Fire Chieftain pretty much is the same, right? It has some buff here and there and some nerf here and there. I think it equals out eventually. I think Pox himself even said that it is just slightly nerfed in the end game version, but early on it's the same. So yeah, just use Righteous Fire. That is my best advice that I can give, even though this is a cast when stunned video. Eventually you can change it to cast when stunned, and eventually you're going to go past this version as well, and that is going to be something for the future, because that is going to be when I actually get the setup myself and tried it myself in 3.25. So until then, peace. Please be sure to like and subscribe if you like this video, and there will be more random build guides on other stuff until the launch of the league. Peace.